Hey, closet busters and bold move makers. It is time once again for Life Uncloseted. So I want you to gather around because it is time once again to kick down those closet doors of your life. We're here to escape our BS, explore our fears, and elevate our self-expression. I'm your host, Rick Clemens. I'm the bold move expert and that coming out guy who's going to take you to the party, the pulpit, the wake, and back to the party of living your life uncloseted. So come on along with me and grab hold of yourself and get ready to step out, step up, and step into facing your fears, making your bold moves, and living life without apologies. Now let's get to the show. Hey, Life Uncloseted family. Here it is, just a couple of days before the new year. Actually, it's like a day and a half, a day, whatever. It's close. We're almost there. And hopefully 2021 will be better. Let's just say that. We'll leave it to the stars. But as you know, here on Life Uncloseted, we tell lots of different coming out stories, everything from people coming out of the closet on their sexuality to people who are like, I'm done. This relationship needs to be done. I need to leave. I need to come out of the closet and admit it never really worked. It never should have worked, so on and so forth. And even some of the stories of people who have come out of tragic accidents and gone on to live their life in beautiful ways. So if you are trying to live your life unapologetically and ready to come out of the closet, hop on over to Life Uncloseted. On the website, you'll find a really, really cool little tool called How to Live Your Unapologetic Life. Go ahead and opt in, take that, and see what comes out for you. So let's dive in here. I want you to just imagine that you're a rising pop star. You're starting to get your feet wet in the music industry. Suddenly you meet someone pretty well known in the industry, and before you know it, you're part of a big sort of group. I'm not going to give it away. And then suddenly everything changes and you find yourself on your own. And in a way, you've gone missing from the boy band era. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today with our guest, John Chandler. He was formerly part of a boy band called Six Piece, and he is back with his own music, doing his own thing. And he's going to share just a little bit of his journey about his coming out, his leaving the boy band sort of space, and now he's doing his own thing in Nashville and really stepping into what is it like when you finally discover you're on your own in your own way. So, John, welcome to the podcast, man. Really happy to have you here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So John has said he's back in Nashville. He kind of got caught in all this crazy pandemic stuff. I'm giving you all the backstory so we can go into this stuff. But you've been kind of like back and forth between LA, Nashville, trying to like see if you can hopscotch away from COVID, and you didn't get away from it, did you, man?
No, well, not at all. So I'm actually originally from Atlanta. So I've kind of always been back and forth between Atlanta, LA, and New York. And Nashville was kind of the last music city that I hadn't really tried. So I was living in LA. I had just broken up with my boyfriend at the time, and I was looking for something new. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna like risk it all. I got rid of everything in my apartment, sold everything, moved to Nashville, and like the next night there was this huge tornado that wiped out a lot of Nashville. And then a few weeks after that, COVID kind of became a huge thing. So I decided to go back to Nashville to quarantine with a friend for a few months because I didn't want to just be in this new town sequestered by myself for all those months. So yeah, went back to LA for a few months where I have like friends and a base there. Then came back to Nashville in July. So yeah, I'm just here, man.
It's got to be interesting, kind of quote traveling about the country in the midst of all this. I haven't really traveled a lot since we've, this all kicked in. Traveled locally here in California, but it's got to be kind of that interesting space of, okay, well, some people are doing things this way, other people are doing it this way. I mean, what was it like moving about the globe, so to speak?
Well, I definitely, at first, I don't think we knew what we were dealing with. So like at first, I wasn't really worried about it. And then obviously, as it progressed, it got worse and worse. But honestly, I feel safer on a plane than I do at Trader Joe's, to be honest with you. Because like I have my own row. There was no one around me. The way the air works, it filtrates through the plane really quickly.
Right.
You have to wear your mask the entire time. There was no food and beverage service, even on 6-hour flights. So yeah, honestly, I didn't feel unsafe at all. But like at the grocery store, you're grabbing stuff. People are 6 inches away from you. So I don't know. There's no right and wrong. You just have to kind of be cautious and do what makes you feel safe. And I feel like I've always kind of followed the rules. But I did get some hate stuff online when people saw that I was traveling. So I tried to not really put it out there anytime I was traveling and stuff, just to not give the wrong idea. But yeah.
Interesting. So, speaking of wrong ideas and getting hate stuff and all that sort of stuff, you've kind of been on an interesting journey as a musician and as a singer and finding your way. Had some really hot luck in the beginning, and then I don't know, you just
Yeah.
kind of taking your own path. So, for those who don't know who Maurice Starr is, why don't you kind of fill in the gap for those that are listening who don't know who that is?
So he's the music mogul behind like New Edition and New Kids on the Block. He basically did New Edition, and they became huge. And these are his words, not mine. He said, "What if I did a white version of New Edition?" That was literally what he thought he was going to do, and that was New Kids on the Block. And obviously, they became, the biggest thing in the world. I mean, they still hold some records over some of the most recent boy bands. And they literally started the boy band craze as we know it. Like everyone that worked under Maurice Starr, Lou Pearl, and Johnny Wright, they all kind of came from that camp, and that's where we got NSYNC, Backstreet, Five. I mean, C Note, every single band you can think of. But yeah, it was kind of a crazy thing. I grew up in church. I was born in Alabama, raised in Georgia, so definitely small town. My parents were pastors. Always kind of had music in my life, but like no one tells you that music is like an opportunity for a career, especially in a small town. That's more something you do for fun or in church, whatever. But yeah, at a really young age, I was working for this entertainment company as a dancer, and I just happened to be in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton in Atlanta, and this guy called me over. I had no idea who he was, and turns out it was Maurice Starr. So yeah, that's kind of how the whole journey began, and that's not a realistic way. Like that's not how it normally works. Like all of a
Right.
sudden, some mogul meets you in a Ritz-Carlton lobby, but that's just how it happened. And I was in a gospel band for a little bit, and actually, the reason that I got out of the gospel band is because I was kind of already coming to terms with my sexuality, which is hard enough as it is, but it's
Yeah.
definitely hard when you're also in this like music industry, which I mean, it's not that long ago, but this is like pre Troye Sivan, pre Adam Lambert, pre Will and Grace, Queer as
Right.
Folk.
Right.
It was not like gay was not acceptable in the media at all.
Right.
So yeah, so I kind of was like, well, maybe the gospel group isn't the best idea for me. So I asked to be part of his other project, which was his kind of R&B pop group. Um, yeah, that's how I got in the 60s.
So for you, as this is all unraveling, you're starting to deal with your own sexuality, enlightenment and challenges, music starting to happen. What was the most scary part of all of this that was going on for you?
Well, I wasn't shy about it. That's the funny thing. Like I was out to all my friends and family. I'm not a shy person. Like in my mind, at 16, I was ready to tell the world, but the world wasn't ready for me to tell it, I guess. So everyone in the band, everyone that I was working with advised me like extremely strongly, like it's just not an option. Like you
Mm.
can't come out. But they pitched it in a way that it was for my own good. It wasn't like they were threatening me in a bad way. Looking back, it was a negative thing, but at the time they pitched it as, trust me, this won't serve you well. We're trying to like do the best thing for you. And I
Right.
was young, so I kind of believed it. And they were probably right, to be honest with you. I mean, it just wasn't cool there. So yeah, so it was weird to be completely out in my personal life, but then doing radio interviews with people where they're like, "So what kind of girls do you like, John Chandler?" And having to be like, "Oh, I like a girl that makes me laugh," and the band is like, snickering in the background.
Right.
So it became like kind of like an inside joke. But
And
yeah,
where were you living at the time when all this was going on?
we were based out of Atlanta, but
Okay.
we were traveling everywhere. I mean,
Right.
we were. That's how much the music industry has changed in such a small amount of time. Like you couldn't just go on Instagram Live and say I have a new record coming out. You had to
Right.
go do every radio show.
Right.
So we would take a trip to New York, wake up at 4 a.m., do all the radio shows, do concerts. We do all the mall tours. Like malls used to be like
Right.
where
Right.
every band.
Right. The thing. Right.
It was just, and it feels like it was so not long ago. But thinking back to that model, it's like now it's
It's
ancient,
completely different. Yeah, it's very
completely different.
ancient.
Yeah,
Now, the reason I
yeah,
ask that because it's so interesting to hear you say, no, you can't be out that way. And knowing that you're from the South, because when I initially came out of the closet, I was 19 years old. And as we were talking before we came on to record, I was in college in a little small college outside of Chattanooga. And as soon as you said those words, you can't do that, it just took me right back to that same conversation. And I
yeah,
didn't end up kind of like you. I didn't come out completely. And I actually went back in the closet and then got married and all this other stuff. But it's so interesting to just hear even generationally, because I know you're much younger than I am, but just to hear this, oh, you can't be this, it's this constant cycle of those words never quit being uttered. You know, it's such an
Yeah.
interesting space, and especially hearing about this in the music industry. And my one of my husband's friends is actually married to Adam Lambert's cousin. I don't know, they're family somehow. And so
Okay.
we've gotten little interesting tidbits about, you know, conversations he's had. And it's just such an interesting thing to think about the music industry being like, no, gay's not cool. When yet
Yeah.
there's so many gay artists who've made it big, you know, Elton John, Adam Lambert, Prince, who knows what Prince's proclivity really
Well,
was, you
even
know?
even if you're not like on the stage
Yep.
as an openly gay person, think about every producer, manager,
Yep.
agent, photographer. I mean, there's so many gay people that are a part of the music industry.
Yep.
And there's, I mean, behind every person there's hundreds of people on their team. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean, to act like that doesn't exist in the
Right.
industry is just, it's just insane. And
Right.
also, like, look at high school. Like, who do you think, like, everyone in chorus and drama were the people called the gays? Well,
Right.
those are the people that are actors and singers. Hello.
Yeah,
So of course there's
exactly.
gay celebrities.
It's so interesting. In fact, it's really
Yeah.
fascinating to me to like hear these stories and then think about, okay, the parallel of what you went through with Six Piece, where, you know, there's like this uncertainty, are you guys going to make it? And you kind of came on the scene in the wrong time. But that uncertainty piece, it's the same uncertainty that you feel as a gay person. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I don't know if I'm going to make it. You know, I don't know if I can actually be who I want to be. And yet this happens all the time in the music industry. It's like, okay, one day, you know, not to blend fashion with music, but it's kind of like Heidi Klum saying, one day you're in and one day you're out. You know, it's like it
Yeah.
happens that quickly. So for you, as you've kind of come past this whole Six Piece thing and started moving on, what makes you feel like, okay, I'm on my path. I know you've done some deep work and, you know, all this sort of stuff, but you found this awareness of yourself to say, I'm staying on my path. I'm going. What's helped you do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because every interview that I do, people act like Six Piece was yesterday and that I just bounced back. I'm like,
Right.
there's a huge time lapse
Right.
between, that. So I mean, and that's another thing that I think is funny. I think people think that if you're not releasing art, that you're not an artist anymore. Artists are people just like everyone else. You don't ever stop being an artist, but sometimes life kind of takes over for a minute. Maybe you have, a death in the family, some mental health problems, some addiction problems, or a relationship that, so people kind of go off the rails for a minute, but they never stop being artists.
Right.
So that's why it was kind of cool that the first song that I kind of re-released was called Missing, because I heard people joke like, where have you been? And I was like, well, yeah, I haven't been missing. I've been right here. I
Right.
just haven't necessarily been in the public eye. But it took me a while to kind of subscribe to the fact, like the idea of an indie artist, that didn't make
Mm-hmm.
sense to me. Because if you start your music kind of path as a major label artist, you don't want to go backwards. You want to, that's what you're expecting. So when I left Atlanta and moved to LA the first time, I just kind of had this sense of entitlement. Like, I'm here, ready for my next record deal, like ready to get signed, because that had been my first experience. So I wasn't, looking for someone to produce my music on my own. I wasn't looking to book my own shows. So for years, I kind of was waiting for that to happen. And then I kind of realized that everything was shifting, and I started seeing like, these 15-year-olds in their bedroom in Milwaukee,
Right.
all becoming stars. I'm like, wait, who are you?
Right.
So I was like, well, hold on, I need to reevaluate it. So then I kind of let go of that, necessarily needing to be the next big pop star. I'm like, why do I do what I do? Like, you have to ask yourself that, which is weird, because once you've done something for so long, sometimes you just do it, as a robot. And
Yep.
I had to ask myself, why do I do music? It's because I love music. I'm a musician. I don't just love singing music. I like creating music.
Right.
So once I kind of got back to that and I started just writing music, I was working in a music venue when I left LA and went to New York. I was working in a music venue. And after being a server there for 2 years, I got booked to perform there. And that kind of was a big deal, going from being in the shadows to being back on stage. And yeah, just doing music for the sake of the love of music, and letting go of all the ego and any expectation. People can kind of feel that. And so I started getting really good response, and people felt that I was more authentic. Because obviously the boy band vibe is very, contrived and choreography and pop. which is great. It's awesome. But like when I sit down at a piano, that's not necessarily what comes out. So I just kind of, was listening to kind of my inner voice, if you want to call it that, and just kind of getting back to the basic of things. And it's funny, once I kind of started to get in that groove, then COVID happened, which is kind of like, I joked, the universe telling everyone to take a seat. Like, you didn't have a choice. It didn't matter how rich you were, no socioeconomic status, fame. It didn't matter. Race, wherever you are on the globe, everyone had to sit down and like pause. And that's scary, to be alone with your thoughts and have to really, and that's kind of what missing is about, is like, what is missing from my life? Because it's not necessarily what's wrong with your life, but what's missing. And so when we were forced to take everything out of our life, now we're slowly starting to put things back in. That's what missing is about, is being very pointed in what you put in your life. Put things there that are missing, things that need to be there, and not just, be filled with all this fluff that is not necessary.
It's interesting that you say that, because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine the other day about COVID and where we are and what we're doing. And those who listen to the podcast know I have worked from home since 2003. So being on Zoom calls and all this stuff, that's just my life. So when COVID hit, it wasn't like a huge shift for me. But to your point of what's missing and then what are we starting to put back into life, I said, it's kind of like anybody who's ever done the Whole30 meal plan. You kind of, for 30 days, you take out sugars and carbs and all these things. You like take them all away. And you kind of do this 30-day lifestyle where everything other than just certain things are in your diet. And then to kind of figure out, okay, what is good for you as a person, you slowly start to bring things back in, and you realize the stuff you didn't really need. I mean, I thought I was going to like have this really weird, like, detox from, alcohol. There was no alcohol in this whole thing. I'm like, okay, not that I'm a drunk, but I love my wine. And it was so interesting to just kind of watch life suddenly just adjusted. You could just adjust. Luckily, my husband was with me in this whole thing. So when it's two doing it, it's a little bit easier. But it's interesting you use that analogy, because it's true. What's actually missing? I mean, there's not a whole lot that I've missed. Okay, I miss theater. I'll admit it. I'm a theater geek. I really miss theater these days. But other than that, there's not a whole lot through this craziness that I can say, God, I miss this. Okay, maybe hanging out with friends. Yeah. But, as it's starting to open up, we've hung with certain groups of friends, only those friends, But it is such an interesting space to play in. And I just love that you brought it up that way, because I think people sometimes look at what's missing like in a really negative way instead of what's missing for the good. What's not present in your life that's actually making
what
things
can I
really
add?
Yeah. So what could you add back to your life right now that if you could just add it back in, you'd love to have it back in your life?
Oh my gosh. Maybe travel. I mean, I mentioned that I have traveled a little bit, but it's not like seamless. I've traveled to places that I needed to be. I would love to just go somewhere for vacation. I miss that. And like, I miss just being able to sit down with friends. I mean, obviously I do see it like how you said, I see like certain groups of people that I feel comfortable with. So I'm not completely just quarantined and sequestered to myself, but it is different. Like, on your birthday, not being able to go out, to a bar or to a restaurant with a bunch of your friends, or holidays, having to be like a little selective and on who can come. Like, we don't know those cousins, where have they been? I don't know. It's a weird vibe to have to always be cautious. And if you're not careful, the caution can turn to fear, which is definitely not the space you want to live in. So that's the thing. I guess I miss living without fear, I guess. So I like to start my day watching the news, but then I don't watch it again the rest of the day, because I like to start and see did anything crazy happen while I was asleep, but I can't look at it all day long or it becomes too much. But yeah, and you mentioned that, like, the no wine thing. I love to drink, but I sometimes have to like remove it from my life just to kind of get some clarity, and not, especially during COVID, there was no boundaries. Like there was no job I had to get up and go to. I wasn't with anyone that was going to look at me sideways and judge me. So there was no reason for me not to just do whatever I wanted, which was fun. But then sometimes I'm like, okay, let me maybe not drink for a little bit so I can actually be productive, get some
Mhm.
clarity, and not waste this time. Because as horrible as this whole thing has been, it's also been a gift. Like to be able to, like you said, you work from home. Not everyone does. It's been a gift to be able to spend this much time just in solitude to kind of like
Yeah.
stir your soul and figure out what you want to do next and plan your next
Mhm.
move and not just let life pass you by. Um, but to actually harness and control what you want to do and that, at least for me, that's what it's been. So
Mhm.
it's definitely been a year that I will never forget ever.
Right.
Just absolutely crazy.
I love the solitude piece that you brought up because I think in so many ways you use the term, the universe was telling us all to take a seat. I think there's so many metaphors here to take a seat, to put the pause button on, to take a breath, whatever it is, because in our own way, I think each of us have been invited into this place to really be with ourselves. Even if you got a
Yeah,
partner or a husband or a wife, it's like, okay, how are you going to do this? What are you waking up to each and every day that says, what is the lesson I'm supposed to be learning from this? And it's been a
yeah,
really interesting journey to watch a lot of people that I work with in my coaching and stuff. Man, that dial has been turned all the way up to like,
yeah.
yes, I need to take a deeper look at life right now. So with that in mind and having spent a lot of solitude and stuff with yourself, where do you think this is going to take you musically as you continue? Because you've just been sitting there playing tiddlywinks. You haven't been producing anything. So, you know,
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, that's the thing. Like, so my new EP is all about that. It's literally just an EP about self discovery, and the name of the EP is just the actual track list of the songs. It's
it's
changing,
awesome.
missing. It's just called changing, missing, running, growing. That's that's the name of the songs on the EP. And each name of the song kind of says its own story. It's all
Hmm.
about what's missing and what's changing. Growing. What are you running from? So it's definitely um, the most authentic music I've ever released. I feel like because I like all types of music, but if you come to my live shows, it's me at a piano doing kind of a soulful acoustic piano kind of vibe. So this kind of reflects that a bit. And yeah, I don't know what's going to come next for me, and that's kind of the beauty of it. Like in Missing, there is no resolution in that song. It literally says like it's something that I want, something that I need. I can't seem to find it. And that's the whole point, is that it's an evolution, and evolution by definition doesn't stop.
Right.
I mean, every morning I'm waking up saying, "What can I do today?" and resetting my intentions. And it's a scary but exciting place to be in. Um, but it has made me thankful, just for the things that I do have, and I do think that's the secret of happiness is gratitude.
Hmm.
Gratitude, 100% is the only thing that makes you happy. So yeah, so hopefully, like you were saying, hopefully 2021 is better. But you know what? There wasn't something. There was a lot of great things in 2020. So I don't want to act like 2020 was a wash.
Yeah.
I mean, I moved
Yeah.
to I moved to a new city. I released new music for the first time in 4 years. I really did some soul searching. I mean, I got to spend more time with family because my family's in Atlanta, so I was a 4 hour
Right.
drive away instead of having to hop on a 6 hour plane. So there's definitely like some really cool things that I want to be thankful for, and not just write off that 2020 was a bust. So
All right.
yeah, because we don't know what 2021 could bring.
Exactly. We don't, we don't. And it's such an interesting space. And you're the probably about the third person recently that I had similar conversations with on the podcast around how I know for me, 2020 was a surprise. It was a complete surprise at how well, I've done in my business, with my coaching practice, with all the stuff. My second book is pretty close for me being done, ready to start the second draft and all this sort of stuff. And if somebody had told me at the beginning of 2020 that I would have made more money than I did in the last couple of years and all this, I would have been like, but it's this crazy thing. But yet it actually gave me breadth to like slow down myself,
Mhm.
made me appreciate some things that I wasn't appreciating, and just kept inviting stuff in. Yeah, I'm not crazy about all the crazy bullshit that's going on in so many other places, but if I don't allow myself into that space, it's really easy to be much more happy and in possibilities,
Yeah,
that's the thing. And I think for a lot of people, this caught them so much by surprise. And I'm not saying that, ooh, you and we're hovering above everybody else, but I think there's something too when you have done some practice of gratitude and practice of meditation or any of that stuff, or, being in, literally saying, but what's the possibility in this? What's the opportunity? I think it helps you grow through trials and changes. Even as we were coming on the air to record this, I saw a news story, which I won't even bring up because I want to just keep this in this really positive space, but it could have taken me completely out. I'm like, okay, well, that wasn't a surprise. So, what's next? Let's keep going, And I think that's the beauty of being, artistic, number one, that you give yourself the permission to keep going and digging and finding and creating. I love that you said you make music to create it. It's just such a beautiful endeavor that it kind of takes you out of the rest of the bullshit of life.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like could help people right now, just from your space in the planet, to really just kind of look at the world through a little bit different lens? What would you say?
Well, I've heard so many people say like, oh, I can't wait till this is over so we can get back to normal. And that, to me, is the scariest thing. If we went back to normal, I see this as an opportunity to change things. I mean, everything needs to change. I feel like everything systemically is crumbling. I mean, I'm not going to get political, but politics, religion, education, just people's lives, our economy, everything is crumbling. Which, okay, so let's not go back to normal. Let's think of something different. Let's rebuild in a better way.
Yeah.
Like, if your house crumbles to the ground because of the foundation, you don't just do the same thing as you did before. You fix the foundation. So let's fix it and go from there. So I mean, I don't know. I know for me, it's forcing me to kind of think outside the box. What's the saying? Necessity is the I don't even want to try to quote it. I'll say it wrong. Basically saying that you come up with invention out of necessity. I forget the exact quote.
Yeah.
So like I've had to think outside the box as a musician because like I released this music this year. Normally I would do like a record release show and blah blah blah. I couldn't do that because of COVID.
Right.
So it's forced you to like do things more virtual. Now you're like cold calling and cold emailing publishers and stuff, which before they would kind of look at that as weird. Now the good news is they don't look at that as weird. They understand why you're cold emailing them because that's what the vibe is now. So it's kind of shrank the world a bit. You can just reach out to people. So I don't know.
It's interesting. I was recording another podcast earlier today, and the guy's name is Tim Seelig, and he's actually is the conductor of the Gay Men's Chorus in San Francisco. And we were having this same exact conversation about what this has done. And he goes, what's interesting to me is because of COVID, I can now sit here on a screen and look at you and see you and look you in the eye, where so much of the rest of my life I was like, so let's talk about that. All we did was talk over phones and stuff. Yes, we met, in person a lot more and stuff like that. But he goes, I feel like I'm almost more connected to people now because I'm doing this and I'm looking at you. I can see your facial expressions, and a lot of times it's just the two of us. Whereas if you went to go have a meeting with someone, you'll walk in, and especially like in your world, you'll walk into a record company or a producer and there's like, 10 people in the room. And so now you got to try to, placate to all of them. Right. And so it's interesting how, again, perceptions of, oh my God, this is the worst fucking thing in the world versus I actually feel a little more connected to you, and I have seen this happen over and over again over the months because, again, I started from a space of this was my world. So I got to watch kicking and screaming the rest of the world come into this world, right? And now to see some of those people who were kicking and screaming, they're just like embracing this. They're my clients who are like, oh my gosh, this is actually kind of cool. I can have people in my world from all over the world in a whole different way,
Yeah.
But it's very, very cool. So as we're heading into 2021 and not just a couple of days as we're looking at when this is coming out here, what would you love to do in 2021? And I know that may be a loaded question, but like if you could just say, for me, John, this is what I'd like to do in 2021, what would be one of those things?
I'm kind of pursuing every creative outlet. Like obviously music is my passion, I guess is the word. I hate saying that because it's so overused, because I think I'm passionate about everything if I'm a passionate person, but music is kind of like my love. But the reason that I'm able to write music is because I'm a good communicator. I like
Mm,
talking to people. I like making people laugh. I like acting. I like all these different things. So I've kind of been putting myself out there in other creative ways that I haven't even done since high school, like auditioning, for film projects and trying to do, more podcasts like this and doing more panels. And I'm just putting myself out there in every creative way that I can, because they're all pieces of me. They're all parts of me. Um, so I think that's the important thing, is not to limit yourself because you say I identify as a singer or I identify as this. That's awesome, but you're such a multifaceted person. Everyone is. So I'm trying to just do everything that makes me happy, um, because that's kind of like what this year has taught me. Everything can be
mhm,
stripped away so quickly. So you better like do everything that you want to do right now, like
mhm,
right this second, because the second you take it for granted, all of a sudden something that you used to do every day, or it's just gone. So I'm trying to
mhm.
just do everything that I can, not waste a moment with family, with friends, any endeavor that I can get into. I'm just putting myself out there for sure.
I love that, because not just because of all the stuff you just said, but there was a piece of it as you were saying. I'm like, these are all pieces of me. And it kind of comes back to who we are in the world as LGBTQ individuals. I know it's hard to come out. I'm not ever going to bullshit anybody that it isn't. Even in the best of circumstances, there's going to be times where, oh, great, you're gay. Cool. Let's go have brunch. Right. Some families, it's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, we knew that. We were just waiting for you to tell us. Right. But even in those moments, it's not easy. But I feel like one of the core elements that I discovered over the years, first in my own experience and then working with people day in, day out doing this work, is when you can see that it's just another piece of you. Just
yeah,
like, music, whether you're writing it, you're singing it, you're going to do some film work. Maybe you'll decide you're going to, do some voiceover work. It doesn't matter what it is. It's all just pieces of who we are. And when we as humans, which is where we're in the throes of this so much, won't allow people to show the pieces of who they are, that's when there's the problem. And that's
yeah,
when, kind of back to this, some of the stuff that you said about your music. It's like, this is when stuff starts missing. This
yeah,
is when we feel like we can't show up because it's missing, because I feel like I have to hide this.
yeah,
It's missing because I feel like this isn't the time for me to be able to share this part of myself.
yeah,
And I love those pieces of the EP because it's in so many ways about inviting people to just step forward. I've
yeah,
seen so many people in my life since February, March hit, where kind of like what you said, John, people are like, fuck
yeah,
it. If I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So
yeah.
now's
No,
the time to
exactly.
do it, you
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I started running. Anyone that knows me, that is listening to this will probably start laughing. Like the idea of me running, like the fact that I didn't drink on my birthday and I started running and I like do a daily morning devotional. That is not who I've ever been.
Mm,
So, but yeah, but like in this situation, I'm like, if I'm ever going to try this, this is the time. Like, when else will I try
mhm.
this if not now? So it's been interesting. Like, it's been such an opportunity to do something different because no one's really around to see if I fail at it. So like, let me just try this real quick.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
it's also a beautiful time to do something different and be with yourself doing it. You
yeah,
know, I mean, it's just, I mean, I do lots of different things, but I was a spin instructor for a while. There was a time when I was like a spin instructor doing the coming out coaching. I was doing some consulting stuff. I mean, and I was writing my book and I was doing my podcast, and people are like, you do so many things. I'm like, yeah, so
yeah,
why not? And I know that for me is part of my things that I need in life. I need variety. I don't need certainty so much. I need variety. And when I have variety in my life, I thrive. And I think this lovely little petri dish we've been in for 2020,
yeah.
and I believe beyond, I don't think we're anywhere close to being out of this petri dish right now. I
Not at
think
all.
it's invited people to start to step into saying, what am I all about? What am I truly all about?
Well, to me, that's what coming out means. All that coming out means is accepting yourself.
Yes.
Once you start to accept yourself, you come out. So that's not something you do once. You have to
Mm-mm.
accept yourself every single day.
Yep.
There's situations I come in now. I've been out of the closet since I was 16, where I have to come out again, not just to
Yes.
myself, but to other people. And it's weird because I forget. I'm like, oh, they didn't know. So you have to always continue to accept yourself. Um, and that's what coming out is to me. So
Well,
especially
and
during
I'm sure in the music business that happens all the time.
yeah,
That coming out
especially
never stops.
especially if your music doesn't necessarily like it's funny. I'm considered, I guess, a gay artist because I'm a gay person, but I don't like have videos where I'm wearing glitter and singing to like
Right.
dance music. Which I'm not downing that at all, but that I'm more of a singer songwriter, so you wouldn't necessarily listen to my music and know that about me. So
Right.
yeah, a lot of times I'll do like an interview like this, and halfway through I'll say something and they'll kind of go, "Oh, like okay, now I get it." I'm like, "Oh, my bad. I need to like preface the
Right.
conversation with that." So yeah, so my point was that like coming to grips with your sexuality is one part of coming out. It's more about accepting yourself. Everything else falls into place, and that's something that we have to continue to do every day, I feel
Right. So here's true confessions from Rick.
like.
So when your publicist, Jeff and I have worked together many, many, many years, he's delivered me lots of different people to interview. So he threw me your pitch and another pitch in the same day. And I'm like, okay, cool. And the first one, I'm like, yeah, totally going to do this because it fit, because it was right before the election. I'm like, yeah, we're going to have them on. And then I'm reading yours, I'm reading through it. I'm like, well, this is a nice story, and I could probably pivot it like, coming out of the boy band era, but I'm like, I don't know. I just, and then of course, I always get to see photos and stuff. I'm like, well, he looks like he could be a gay boy, but I'm not 100% sure. So I literally wrote Jeff back and said, yes to the one, John, I think we just need to kind of twist the story of how it's a coming out story. I said, because is he gay? And of course, Jeff came back and goes, come on, Rick. Of course he's gay. I send you the gay ones. I'm like, okay, cool. But I felt like that was a really good thing to share because you're
Yeah,
right. If I had not known that, okay,
yeah.
I would have probably made my own assumptions, because, hey, you're cute. You kind of got the gay thing hair going and all this sort of stuff. Right. But you
Yeah,
don't come off like in the interview.
yeah.
There's very few moments that I go, oh, okay, yeah, check mark. There was the gay show up, very
No.
few. But it's such an interesting thing because I get that all the time too. If I'm on
Yeah,
somebody else's podcast, it's very rare, depending on the podcast, it's very rare that I play the gay card unless it makes a sense to play the gay card.
yeah, yeah,
And it's very interesting because I'm a big guy too. And most people walking down the street, they would never even guess that I'm gay. But it's just part of who we are and part of being how we show up in the world. And sometimes that doesn't mean we have to wave the gay flag to say, hey, here we are, we're queer. It's just
yeah,
we show up in that way when we show up. So
yeah,
good
yeah,
stuff, man. Well,
yeah.
I love, love, love where you're going. I've listened to some of the music before we had the interview. Wishing you all the best, man. I think there's just so much cool room right now for basically indie artists like you to like,
Yeah,
I'm going to go make my mark. And this is
yeah.
my mark to be made.
Thank you, Rick. No, I'm really excited. I have a lot of cool stuff coming up, and like I said, this whole process of like soul searching and spending so much time alone, I've been able to write and really kind of get focused. So yeah, I'm really excited for 2021. My next single is coming out, called "Changing," which is very appropriate for right now because
Yes, it
everything is
is.
changing. New
Yeah.
year, hopefully new vibe. People are starting new jobs. So yeah, I'm excited.
I love that it's changing because all that stuff you just said, but I also feel like we as a humanity are changing
Yeah, we are.
and we're being called to this change. And some of it's not going to be pretty. Some of it's not, hasn't been pretty. But when we allow the change to happen and we decide how we're going to stand through it or walk through that change, and that's very much to me the metaphor of coming out. When you can walk through the change, that's when your strength shows up and you truly are who you're meant to be in the world. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Great meeting you, man. I love this
Yeah, you too.
conversation
I
and
did too.
good luck with everything. We'll have everything for you to connect with John on the web pages, on the show pages, all his music, all the stuff that's coming out. And hopefully sometime in 2021, as more stuff comes out, let that ambulance get by. Hopefully in 2021, when more stuff comes out, we can have you back again, man, and have another conversation about where you're going.
I would love to. Thank you, man, so much.
You bet.
All right.
Hey, Life Uncloseted family. Another episode of Life Uncloseted has come to an end, and it is time for all of us to sashay away and go face our fears, make those bold moves, and stand up to living our life without apology. But before you do, I've got a favor to ask of you. Would you hop over to iTunes or Spotify or Podbean or wherever it is that you're listening to this and just give us a little bit of love if you like what we're doing here at Life Uncloseted. Here's what it does. It helps other people find the show. It helps other people get to know what we're all about. And you just might help change a life. In fact, if you really want to change a life, we'd love it if you just ask a friend to take a listen and see what they think. So that's it. Love you all deeply. I'm Rick Clemens, the host of Life Uncloseted, and never stop stepping out, stepping up, and stepping into living your life uncloseted.